There weren't many white Christmases in our part of Wales in my childhood. Perhaps one, two, but Christmas cards, Dickens, Dylan Thomas, and Wishful Memory have turned them all into white. I don't know why there should have been so few in such a cold, wet land. The nearness of the sea, perhaps, the Atlantic by way of the Bristol Channel endlessly harried us with gale and tempest. Perhaps our winds were too wild and salty for the snow to get a grip. Perhaps they blew the snow over us to the Black Mountains and Snowdonia and England. Most of the Christmases of my childhood seem to be the same, but I remember one in particular because it departed from the inexorable ritual. On this eve of Christmas, Mad Dan, my uncle, the local agnostic, feared for his belief, but revered for his brilliantly active vocabulary in the half-alien English tongue, sat in our kitchen with a group of men, and with biting scourge and pithy whip drove the great cries of history, the epoch-making, world-changing ones, out of the temple of time. They're all half-truths, he said. Therefore half-lies. I sat and stoned raisins for the pudding and listened, bewitched, to this rough, riddled, rolling, multisyllabic English. There is only one Christian, and he died upon the cross, said Nietzsche. Said Dan. Nietzsche, I thought, he's Japanese. Perhaps my Dan spoke Japanese. It was said he knew Latin and Greek and could write both of them backwards. Can you speak Japanese, Mad Dan? Shh. Shut up, Solomon. Workers of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. Irresponsible rubbish. Cries written by crabbed fists on empty tables from mean hearts. Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. What's that I said? Latin, Copperfield, meaning it is sweetly bloody marvellous to die for your country. Man is born free and is everywhere in chains, golden-tongued, light-brained, heedlessness of consequence. I think, therefore I am. Descartes, I said. French. Right, sir. Thou shalt have a Rolls Royce and go to Oxford and never read a book again. Out of the welter of names, cries, quotations, the references rolled endlessly. He said, Martin Luther should have had a diet of worms. Why, I thought. Why should a man have to eat worms? Can you eat worms? I said. Not as readily as the worms will eat you, he said. And he roared with delight at this incomprehensible joke. He had become more and more burning and bright. He said he had a cold and took some more medicine from a little bottle in his pocket. Well, all this was as it should be. Mad Dan had been talking ever since I could remember, until this moment. Christmas was Christmas, as it had always been. And then my sister's husband, cheek-boned, hollowed, sculpted, came into the room. All right, lads, off you go and take the boy with you. Where to? I said. You go you with Dan and you behave yourself. Where's my sister? Never you mind, go you. So I went out into the night with Mad Dan and the other men. Why was I being sent out at this time of night on a Christmas Eve? My mother died when I was 2 years old. I lived with my sister and her husband ever since. Been lots of Christmases since my mother's death. They could already be relied upon. They had always been the same. The growing excitement of Uncle Ben's Christmas Club. You paid in a sixpence or a shilling a week throughout the year, and in the choosing from the catalogue, Littlewood's catalogue, the breathless guessing at what Santa Claus might bring, what was in those anonymous brown paper parcels on top of the wardrobe. Would there be a farm with pigs in a sty, ducks on a metal pond, 5-barred gates, metal trees, Kentucky fences, a horse or two and several cows, a tiny bucket and a milkmaid and a farmhouse, complete with red-faced farmer and wife in the window and a chimney on top? Pray God it wasn't Tommy Elliott's farm, which I had played with for 2 years and which I feared from glances and whispers caught between my sister and Mrs. Elliott was going to be cleaned up and bought for me, a second-hand present. Everyone would know it must be, if a farm at all, a brand spanking new one. And I'd spend an hour or two singing Christmas carol duets with my friend Trevor, picking up a penny here and a halfpenny there. Then home at 9 o'clock, perhaps to gossip with my sister, eat some more nuts, and be sent to bed sleepless and agog. And now, at that very time of getting to bed, I'm being sent out into the night with Mad Dan and his audience, all of them with Christmas colds, and all of them taking medicine from little bottles kept in their inside pockets. We went to the meeting ground of that part of the village. The end, they call it, a vacant stretch of stony ground between 2 rows of cottages. Inkerman and Balaclava. Both the Inkerman people and the Balaclava people called it the end. Insularity, I realize now, streetophobia. Both streets called it the end. It should have been called the middle. The miners built a bonfire and were standing round it, burning on the one side, freezing on the other. Chestnuts, and because there had been plenty of work that year, potatoes were roasted to blackness and eaten, sprinkled with salt, smoky and steaming from the fire. Mad Dan, making great gestures against the flames, told the silent, half-listening, munching miners of the lies they had been told for thousands of years, the mellifluous advice they had been told to take. Turn the other cheek. Oh. Turn the other cheek, boys, and get your bloody brains broke. Suffer all my children. This side of the river is all torment and torture and starvation. And don't forget the sycophancy to the carriage and the horse, the Daimler, the bare-shouldered remote beauties of many mansions, gleaming with the gold that we made for them. Suffer all my baby men. Beat out with great cold hands the black melancholy of the hymns. When you die and cross that stormy water, that roaring Jordan, there will be unimaginable delights. And God will wipe away all your pains, take away all your tears. Lies, lies, lies. Oh, the night was getting on. Dan was boring now. Christmas was nearly here. Sometimes it didn't make any sense and he was repeating himself. Why had I been sent out so late on a Christmas Eve? I wanted to go. Can I go home now, Mad Dan? Shut your trap and listen, or I will have you apprenticed to a haberdasher. A haberdasher. Fate worse than death for a miner's son. There was, you understand, the ambition for the walk of the miner. Corduroy trousers, with Yorks below the knees to stop the loose coal running down inside your boots, or the rats running up inside your trousers and biting your belly or worse. And the lamp in the cap on the head, and the bandy muscle-bound strut of the lords of the coal-face. There was the ambition to be one of those blue-scarred boys at a street corner on a Saturday night, with half a crown in the pocket and secure in numbers, whistling at the girls who lived in the residential area, the doctors, the lawyers, the headmaster's daughters. Dan roared on. He said he believed in everything. He believed in nothing. He said he knew everything. He knew nothing. He was the Voltaire of Aberravon. He wept once or twice. Silent miners chewed and stared uneasily. Crying was for women or preachers talking of God's magnanimity. Miners did not weep. Not even gabby miners like Mad Dan, who evaded work whenever he could. Mad Dan with mellifluous eloquence had long advocated for frequent and lasting strikes. Life was just too rough to cry about. I tried to sneak out of the circle round the fire, but one of the miners caught me by the ear and brought me painfully back. You go home and we go home. And now there came out of the grey embers of Dan's dying oratory only occasional flashes of coherence. Who sent the slave back to his master? Was St. Paul a Christian? Oh, now there indeed was an Israelite in whom there was much guile. Give me liberty, or give me death. The wind, tigerish, now crouched, now circled, now menaced the bonfire now rearing back from, now roaring back at the wind, sent sparks and smoke and coloured flame up the endless open chimney of the night. I was bored and bewildered. What did Mad Dan mean about cries being lies? His cries did not even sound like cries to me. They sounded like sentences. Cries are screams, like that when somebody busts your nose or twists your arm. How can turn the other cheek be a cry, or God is love, or the wages of sin is death? You know, I dimly guessed what time and mist confounds. And how can the 23rd Psalm be a poem of incomparable beauty? One of the teachers at school had said that it was. It doesn't rhyme. How can it be a poem if it doesn't rhyme? Why? What were cries? How can something be a half-truth? Why were cries lies? Why couldn't I go home? Why was I being sent out late on a Christmas Eve and Holy Santa due any time after midnight? I dimly guessed what time and mist confounds. Why had my sister been upstairs all night long on a Christmas Eve, and Holy Santa due any time after midnight, when I was home? Why wasn't she peeling potatoes or something? Why were two of my aunties sitting in the parlour? Why did they talk low? I dimly guessed. Was my sister dead? Dying. You see, I love my sister sometimes with an unbearable passion. Suddenly I was certain she was dead. Is my sister dying, Mad Dan? We're all dying, Nebuchadnezzar. Even your growing pains are reaching into oblivion. She will last the night, Defrick. She will last the night. My sister was no ordinary woman. No woman ever is, but to me, my sister less than any. Since my mother's death, she had become my mother, and more mother to me than mother could ever have been. I was immensely proud of her. I shone in the reflection of her black-haired, green-eyed gypsy beauty. She used to sing at her work in a voice so pure. The local men said she had a bell in every tooth and was gifted by God. She had eyes so hazel green and open that to preserve them from too much knowledge of evil should have been hooded and vultured, and not as they were, terrible in their vulnerability. She was innocent, guileless, infinitely protectable. She felt all tragedies except her own. I had read of the Knights of Chivalry, and I knew I had a bounden duty to protect her above all other creatures. It wasn't until 30 years later, when I saw her in another woman, that I realized I had been seeking for her all my life. Why was I being kept out? When will they let me go home? Dan was silent now, stoned eyes staring at the fire. He said, "Give me a song, lads. Stay me with minnetons, comfort me with crotchets." And the crag-faced miners sang with astonishing sweetness about a little engine. Corshall Bailey had an engine. It was filled with mighty power. He was pull a little lever, it was go 5 miles an hour. Was you ever see? Was you ever see? Was you ever see such a funny thing before? They sang a hymn about what you could see from the hills of Jerusalem. A song about a green hill far away without a city wall. Of a black pig, and of how necessary and how dreadful it was to kill it. Of the shepherds and the magi. Mad Dan stared, I sang soprano. There was a disturbance in the fire's night wall. My Aunt Ginny stepped suddenly into the light. Mad Dan stood up. "All right," he said. "Lovely," she said. 9 pounds. A girl. "Come, Nebuchadnezzar," said Dan. "Santa called early tonight, home we go." We took 2 steps. "Oh," he said, "any of you lads got a piece of silver? A tanner will do, but a florin is much more tidy." And one of the miners threw him a florin. "Tell her it's a happy Christmas from Nat Williams," and all that. We went home. My brother-in-law whistling by the hearth, the flat iron and the nuts working steadily. My Aunt Cassie and my Aunt Ginny were arch and coy and spoke to me as if I were demented and slightly deaf. "Santa Claus is bought Richie Pitchy a Prezzy-Wezzy. Go upstairs and see what Santa's brought you." So I went upstairs with Mad Dan. I dimly guessed, of course, but still, there was a chance there would be a fire engine, loud red and big enough for an 8-year-old to ride in. The Prezzy-Wezzy was a furious, red-faced, bald, wrinkled old woman, 60 minutes old. Mad Dan pressed the florin into the palm of her left hand. "Oh, she's got a good grip. She'll never be poor." My sister looked washed out and weak. She smiled. I gave her a kiss. Well, what do you think of your Christmas present? Fine, I said. Is that all I get? No, she said, there'll be more in the morning. Fine, I said. Good night then. We went downstairs. The baby cried. Now there, said Dan, is the only cry that is true and immortal and eternal from the heart. What do you think of your new sister? They asked in the kitchen. New niece, I said. Fine. I went to my bed in the box room. Sleep now, said my breath-whistling, nut-cracking brother-in-law. No lighting a candle and a reading. So I pulled the clothes over my head, made a tent, felt for my Woolworths torch, and with John Halifax, gentleman, propped against my knee, I began to read. The wind, wild from America, whooped and whistled around the house. Baby choked with sobs on the other side of the bedroom wall. I listened. Well, I thought, at least it isn't Tommy Elliott's farm.